Majid, thank you so much for spending a few minutes with me. I was so excited when Annie hit me up about this film at the last minute because I think within the first 15 minutes, I was so sucked into it. Just the themes and the way that you were incorporating that with horror, I thought was brilliant, and
Thank you.
I enjoyed it so much. First off, let's tell us a little bit about the vial.
Yeah, so The Vow was a story that, well, the subject matter is something I grew up with through the community. It's just, and it had in my head for almost like now 15 years, but 10 years until we started writing the script. I just didn't know how to tackle the subject matter and how, just because it's nothing that I didn't want to tackle polygamy in a sense where, hey, this is something that I don't agree with or there's something wrong. Because I've met people in polygamous relationship where they've chosen to be in that kind of relationship. And hey, if you choose to be in that kind of relationship, I agree with you and I support it as long as that decision came from you, from as a couple. But there's certain scenarios where in this film where she didn't have a choice, and you see that a lot in the community. But I didn't. So for me, it was really it took time just to kind of get the right angle for the movie, until or the right click or the right flair that okay, I see this movie becoming. We could talk about the subject matter, but I'll also keep it entertaining and thrilling and horror. So that took a little bit of time to get into it. But yeah, I started writing it with my co-writer Johnny, end of 2020, and then developed it for 2 years with my producers and yeah, and then we started shooting it end of 2020, or summer of 2023, and in the post process until the past couple months where we finished it.
The theme of it was really great, and I think that's why horror is really thriving, especially these last few years, is because you're able to talk about uncomfortable subjects in a very almost extravagant way to get your
Yes.
point across, and
Yes.
it's it's really good. I'm curious about. I saw in some notes that you did do a heavy amount of research before
Yeah.
tackling this. What were some of the things that in doing your research that you were able like, okay, this is something that we probably need to tackle or spotlight during the film?
I think there's a lot. So putting in mind, like for example, there's a scene where she sits down with her sister and she's like, "Hey, what do you think? What do you think I should do?" And that's a conversation. Funny, like out of everyone I've spoken to, that whether this happened to or her parents or his parents, because it's not only a story of Amani going through it, but there is that ripple effect of the full family, the full circle. And you see male people, males like me that are very much affected from it, in the community. And so, like for example, that scenario of hey, if you were me, what would you do? That's a conversation that actually came from a person I was speaking to while doing the research, and that whole conversation actually came out of it because there were multiple, we were a group just speaking to each other. There's these two, three women that went through this themselves, and but they knew each other, so they knew they were family members. And one of them came out and said, "Hey, did you see his face? Like, why are you? Is it even worth it? Like, is it worth it that you're throwing your own self and your own freedom and your own dignity for this?" So that these are kind of conversations that I've put into the movie, and there were these are the for me when I watch them, I feel the most joy, because for me, I think my number one goal was with this subject matter is to be as real as possible, especially when in the drama part of the movie where her and her husband sitting down, there's a conversation of him saying, "Hey, you're lucky that." And then this was a line, funny enough, that I was back and forth with, because I wanted to make this accessible to the Western and Eastern audience, except to any person that's not from the GCC region, because this is polygamy is bigger in the Gulf region, more than the rest of the Arab region. Maybe a little bit. It's big in Egypt, but not. But when you go to North Africa, it's not as practiced as much. So for me, for anyone that's not part of the region, I want them to really kind of connect with what he's saying. And there was a line there where he's like, "Hey, you're lucky that I'm telling you I'm not doing it behind your back." This is a line that you keep on hearing a lot in the community, and you hear it a lot. And whether it's a joke, sometimes it comes off as a joke because like, "Hey, you're lucky that I didn't marry someone else on top of you." You know what I mean? So a lot of these. conversations were embedded in the movie, and I wanted to be very honest and truthful about them, and really without because it's unfair for me to say, hey, every polygamous relationship is wrong. That's not true. That's not something I stand by. But there are certain scenarios, which is an Amani scenario. It is. I don't necessarily agree with it. As a father of two daughters, um, having a very strong willed mom, I don't think she would accept it. She'd probably kick my father's ass. Like he would never be able to do it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's not the practice that's wrong here. It's really the journey that they did not take to get there, where it's right
exactly.
at the beginning of the movie, and it's like, knock at the door. Hey, guess
Yeah.
what? She lives here now.
And it's interesting you say that. There was a version of the script that we wrote where we would do backstory and we establish family. And the reason why, and it's funny you say like the knock on the door, a lot of the scenarios I've sat down with, whether it was guys or girls that their fathers, that this happened to them in their family, or women that went through it, it is this sudden. It is this like kind of punch on your face that you get when this news kind of breaks to them. And funny enough, 99% of them, that's how they got the news. It's just a punch on the face. And that's something that from the research I reflected back into how I made the movie. Is that like I want this? Like I remember had a draft early on. It was my second, third draft where we get into the family household. We see them how they are, and we stay for 20 minutes before he enters. He knocks on the door. But then I changed it because that's more truthful to how it actually happens. It's just out of the blue. It's a straight punch. It's a gut punch.
Yeah, and then following that, and I know it's not the same thing. I'm not trying to compare the two things, but the house vibe is a very similar thing to an infidelity. Your house is not the same. Your house is
Mhm.
now has somebody living in there that A, you don't trust for various reasons. In this case, you have an entire new person who is disrupting your family, disrupting your marriage, and is in your house with your daughter. I was
Sure.
like, that's a haunted house. You no
Yeah.
longer feel safe in your
It's an
house. And
invasion.
I'm watching this and I was like, this is great. This is exactly what this would probably be like. You're no longer safe in your own home.
Exactly. No, exactly. And I'm so glad you're saying that because that's exactly what my approach for it was. That's the feeling I wanted people watching the movie to feel is when your house, your safest place where you should this is your safest zone feels like it's turning around on you and it's becoming hostile because of this figure that came in that you don't know who it is, who she is, or what's her background. And Khalid, he brought in Zahra without doing the formal introduction, or he did it the wrong way to begin with, and then he didn't sit, he just left. But yeah,
Yeah, and then also, I did want to ask you about kind of your color choices, your lenses choices, because it became really gritty. It was really dark. There was a lot of shadows, and I mean, it's great because it's like, yeah, this is her home, but this is what I was like. I feel it. This is the lens that they see their house in now, and I thought it was great. Tell me about those choices.
yeah. So we the first decision we've made, oh, actually, no, a decision we made later on when I was so grateful that the producers rode along with me on that decision is shooting it on 16. Nowadays it's tough, which I get, especially if you're shooting in Abu Dhabi or Dubai, where I live, because we don't have any film labs here. So we had to order in film labs. It has to go through the scans, and we had to get a delivery service that to make sure that it doesn't go through scanners. So the film comes in one, that doesn't get ruined, and film it, and then send it back to the UK and develop it. And 5 days later, you'll see the footage. And I remember it came to a crossroad where we're striking the set, and because everything was built on the set, so we're striking the home, right? And we still don't have the footage. So it was, but again, that's one of the things. Going back to answer your question is the reason why this 16 is because it is a thought that this idea of how Khalid did it specifically is that there's the old versus the new, like and I just for some reason it was something that I kept on going back and forth with 16, and I kept on landing on 16. So we started. I want to shoot in 16, and then I went out and we said, all right, I'm going to shoot it on an Alexa with these vintage lenses, but then I went back to 16. I've kept on going back on 16, and I think my subconscious was just telling me is like, hey, listen, this is it's the old versus the new. This is This is not necessarily the new UAE or the new or the world I live in. This is, this used to happen way more in my father's and grandfather's days, and pre that. But today you have a lot of women that are in high positions, and there's a big women empowerment movement that's happening in the UAE, where the leadership they want. People I'm a father of two girls, and I feel very safe that they're here now because and I always felt safe, but career wise, there is a big push for them to really excel and open doors. But yet this thinking still feels old, right? It just still feels a bit outdated, and not necessarily the way he did it. I mean, specifically, not the polygamy. And so that's where I kind of leaned on 16. I'm like, okay, this is why I want 16, and give that grit look instead of trying to shoot it on a modern camera and then try to fog it up and haze it and then shoot vintage lenses. So that was the first decision we've made with the cinematographer, and then from there, there was a lot of films that went across between us that we watch and we reference. One of my biggest homages in the movie, which is pretty clear, and I want it to be clear, is Fatal Attraction. I think that's one of Adrian Lyne is one of my favorite filmmakers, and then he, that type of genre is no longer as profound as it used to be. And I grew up watching Adrian Lyne movies. So for me, when she's sitting in the light, that's my homage to it. So there was a lot of these movies that we watched. That Fatal Attraction was one of them. Whatever Happened to Baby Jane was another thematic, because I love psychobilly movies. That was my inspiration. That's what actually kickstarted me. It was to be very fascinated on how I tackle it from a genre perspective, and have fun with it. But yeah, so it was a lot of this back and forth of going, watching movies that we loved, and then finding our own voices while we're building the set and going again and taking pictures, and we even opted to, because we shot 16, we opted to shoot a spherical. I always push for anamorphic lenses because I feel on the big anamorphic for me justifies in my brain. But for me, that's cinematic. That's something I grew up with. But with here, we wanted to go spherical and then just crop it to 235. That's the decision we made, and because we're shooting on film, it just, that energy of the film, it just has it all. It's better than any anamorphic lenses I've worked on a digital. So,
And then finally, I got to ask you, how did you choose your horror elements for the film that we're going to be able to manifest on screen so that we can enjoy that aspect of it?
you mean how like I designed them, or?
Oh yeah, like what did you choose as far as like what you were going to do for your poltergeist, or like what were you going to do to implement that horror aspect to what Amani is going through?
Sure, sure. I think one of the first things that the decision I made, like I remember when in early drafts we had a lot of these horror sequences where didn't really connect with the drama. And then I said one thing. Well, as we were speaking as a group with the producers, one phrase came out is that, hey, let the drama lead the horror and not the horror lead the drama.
Mhm.
And once that was said, it just clicked in my head. I'm like, all right, yeah, this is a domestic story. This is a story about a household, and that's one thing that I want. I don't want to make a horror movie for the sake of making a horror movie. I want every single step of it is going into the psyche of Amani, and really dissecting it. And like, the instance of her seeing the TV and then she goes back to the kitchen and she comes and opens it. It's not there. And you start, as an audience, start questioning, is she going crazy? Because one of the things I did, that was one of the big sentences we said early on that I really kind of grabbed to. And then there was that was basically, I redesigned all the horror sequences to facilitate that, to really push Amani's psyche to the max, and really follow her journey. And one of the things that also, as I was doing research, that really stayed with me for a long time, was one of the people I was interviewing. She said that when this happens to you, you're like, you have kids, and you have a good life, and you think you have a good life, and this happens to you, you start questioning everything in your life, right? You start questioning, and then you as a human, and you as a human being, you start questioning every decision you've made, and you start losing trust. And this is the person that you should feel the most trusted. And by the way, this could be in a polygamous relationship, or it could be like someone that has a mistress in the West or in the East, or it's a similar thing. It's that ultimate betrayal. And the more I've started, it's like you start becoming that first year. And I remember they took me through like timelines. They were a lot of them. In conclusion, like a lot of them, who I was speaking to, they kept on saying that first 6 months, I started becoming a person that I didn't know who I was. Like now, I look back at it, I'm not that person. I'm not like I left my kids, and this is exactly what Amani. That's one of the things that Amani is going through. Is frankly, it's her being rightfully so in the beginning, like selfish in a way. It's like I want my home, it's my house, it's this, it's that, it's she's looking at the wrong things instead of her being selfless in the end. And that was a conversation that we've had a lot, and we've had, and of course this comes of. It's not really. I don't know if selfish is a like. I'm not trying to push that. It's unfair what happened to her, but yet she didn't see what is the brightest thing in her life, and what is the most important thing. And even Khalid didn't. Like two of them as a couple early on in the movie didn't see what is the most important thing to having a family is your kids. And they both kind of turned their back on it. They turned their back on Noor. But that's her journey, and this is something I stuck into from the interviews I've done, from the research I've done. That's what I wanted to see through the movie is her going from hey, it's my home, it's this, and not seeing her daughter as the main drive that should drive her. Even Khalid, but Khalid's selfish. We've established that as a father. But Amani turns around and says, "Hey," when she walks out, and then is like, "This is the most important thing. That this is why I'm here. She is more important than you." And there's this one of my favorite lines in the end of the movie is like, "I'm going to become everything that I wasn't with you." You know what I mean? And that's part of her transition and her kind of climax and her growing. In this field, and a lot of people I've interviews went through it, and you'll be surprised. It's not only the mothers that went through that; it's also sometimes the kids. It takes them a long time to really digest this betrayal.
Majid, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate all the insight on the film. So many layers that we can enjoy in this film, whether it's just the relationship, the themes, the horror, the daughter. And so congratulations on also
Thank you,
your
Manny.
world premiere
Appreciate it.
at Fantastic. No, what is it?
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Really nice to meet you. And
Likewise.
thank you again for your time.
All right. Bye bye.
Take care.